Her expression carried a hint of coldness and distance. "What is it?" she asked. Bai Jian paused. In the end, she still didn't mention what happened tonight. "Meow meow. I have a gift for you. Are you free to find time to have a meal together in the next couple of days?" Seeing my hesitation, Bai Jian suddenly said, "There's a project on your uncle's side. I can help with it." I was stunned. Bai Jian didn't say much more. "Think it over. Once you've decided, call me anytime." I didn't say anything. To be honest, I didn't trust her, because she and Zi Mingquan and Shen Qingli were all close. If I had a conflict with Zi Mingquan in the future, who knew if she would be like Shen Qingli and side with Zi Mingquan to take the project and threaten me with my uncle, perhaps guessing the reason for my hesitation. Bai Jian assured me, "I can guarantee you, I will absolutely not mix personal matters with business." Hearing this, I asked suspiciously, "Are you sure?" Bai Jian nodded firmly. "I'm sure." I hesitated for a moment and said, "All right." Bai Jian smiled. "Whenever you have time, you can contact me. I'll arrange the meeting time." I nodded and didn't say anything more. I got into the car. Bai Jian didn't move as the car passed by her. I rolled down the window and nodded at her, then stepped on the gas and drove away, watching my car leave. Only then did Bai Jian get into her car and leave. I went back. The Jiang family had called me back. Grandma Jiang and the others were all there, clearly waiting for me. Grandma Jiang reached out to me. "You're back." I walked over and sat beside her. Grandma Jiang held my hand and asked, "Xiangshen, are you planning to let go of Shen Qingli?" I slowly said, "We're preparing to divorce." Hearing this, the old lady smiled. "Divorce is good." But then, immediately, she frowned again. Nianian is very attached to her now. She has indeed treated Nianian quite well these past 2 years. She probably won't give you full custody of Nianian. I just said about that. I know. I'll discuss it with her properly. It's getting late. Everyone should rest first. Grandma and the others went to rest. But I still couldn't rest, because Zhou Zhuwei and Su Wanqing had talked a lot on the way back. When I got home, I received from Su Wanqing a pile of project tasks with a note, "Teacher wants these finished before 6 a.m. tomorrow." I took a sip of water and replied, "Got it." I turned on the computer and immediately got busy. It wasn't until after 4 a.m. that I finally finished. Su Wanqing was also overwhelmed. "Teacher wants us to go there before 9. After setting an alarm for 8, I finally turned off the lights and went to bed. The next day, when I was woken by the alarm, my whole body felt weak. When I went downstairs, I didn't look very well. Grandma Xian asked with concern, "Why not sleep a bit more?" I replied drowsily, "I need to go see the teacher." Grandma knew Zhou Zhuwei was strict with students. She just said, "I'm not at ease with you like this. Let the driver take you instead of driving yourself." When we arrived at Zhou Zhuwei's villa, the 3 of us, teacher and students, went straight into the study and got to work. It wasn't until lunchtime that we finally had a moment to breathe. At that moment, my phone suddenly rang. It was a message from Zhou Jiming, asking if I wanted to go skiing together in the afternoon. I replied with a voice message, "I'm busy today. I won't go. You go ahead." In the afternoon, when I came out of Zhou Zhiwei's study to get water, Zhou Jiming sent me another message. This time, it was several photos. The people in the photos were Shen Qingli, Zi Mingquan, Jiang Nianian, Bai Jian, and Meow Meow, 5 people. Then Zhou Jiming sent another message. I was originally with a few friends, happily skiing. I didn't expect to run into them. Such a mood killer. I calmly sent back a voice message. "Enjoy yourselves. Don't mind them." Zhou Jiming quickly replied with a voice message. "We'll probably leave in the evening. Do you want to come?" I refused. "I can't make it. I have things to handle here." I put away my phone, picked up my cup, and went back into the study. This work kept me busy for the entire day. By evening, Su Wanqing stretched and said to Zhou Zhuwei, "Teacher, let's go out for dinner later." Our treat. Zhou Zhuwei didn't even bother to look at her and said, "I have plans later. I've arranged to have dinner with Shen Qingli tonight." Su Wanqing glanced at me while I just drank water calmly. Zhou Zhuwei picked up her car keys and left. "When you leave, remember to lock the door." Just as she finished speaking, she added, "But I shouldn't be gone long." Meanwhile, on the other side, Jiang Nianian and Shen Qingli, along with Ziming Xuan and the others, had been skiing for half a day and were in a great mood. After leaving the ski resort, Jiang Nianian happily said to Shen Qingli, "Mom, I want to eat seafood later." Shen Qingli gently patted Jiang Nianian's head. "Mom and your Uncle Z have something to do later. We can't eat with you. The driver is already waiting for you in the parking lot. When you get home, just tell the chef whatever you want to eat." After hearing this, Jiang Nianian immediately pouted. "What is it? Why can't you take me with you?" Shen Qingli gently pinched her cheek and smiled. "It's something very important." Jiang Nianian pouted and looked at Ziming Xuan, hugging him and acting spoiled. "Uncle Z." Ziming Xuan bent down, held Jiang Nianian, and smiled. "It's something important for Uncle. I've been waiting for this opportunity for a long time," Uncle said. "Nianian, can you understand Uncle?" Hearing Ziming Xuan say this, although Jiang Nianian was still a bit unhappy, she still nodded obediently. "I understand. But Uncle Z, you have to make it up to me next week. Take me to eat something delicious." Ziming Xuan patted her head. "Of course." As he spoke, he smiled and looked at Shen Qingli. Bai Jian, standing aside, watched without saying anything. Miao Miao came over and held Jiang Nianian's hand and said, "There will be a chance next week. Let's have a meal together then." After interacting a few times, Jiang Nianian and Miao Miao had already become good friends. After watching Jiang Nianian and Bai Jian leave, Shen Qingli and Ziming Xuan also got into the car and headed to the restaurant. They arrived at the private room. A few minutes later, Zhou Zhuwei also arrived. Seeing Zhou Zhuwei push the door open and enter, Shen Qingli and Ziming Xuan stood up to greet Ms. Zhou. Upon seeing Ziming Xuan, there was not the slightest surprise on Zhou Zhuwei's face. Ziming Xuan politely introduced himself again. "Hello, Ms. Zhou. My name is Ziming Xuan. We met before at the tech exhibition." Zhou Zhuwei showed little expression and shook her hand. "I know." After Zhou Zhuwei sat down, Ziming Xuan then sat beside her. "I admire you very much. I've always hoped to have the chance to meet you face to face and discuss professional knowledge in this field." At that moment, Shen Qingli's phone rang. She stood up and said to Zhou Zhuwei and Ziming Xuan, "I'll step out to take a call. You to chat." After Shen Qingli left, Ziming Xuan picked up the menu and handed it to Zhou Zhuwei. "Ms. Zhou, let's order first. We can talk while eating later." Zhou Zhuwei pushed the menu aside and said, "No need for now." Before Ziming Xuan could react, Zhou Zhuwei spoke directly. "You want to be my student?" He admitted calmly and confidently, "Yes. I am very interested in the AIG field. I hope to study under you and strive to make greater progress." After speaking, he took out his laptop. "Let me show you the product I made for my PhD graduation." Zhou Zhuwei scrolled through his graduation project. After reviewing several sets of data, she said, "As a graduation project, it is indeed much better than that of most PhD students." Hearing Zhou Zhuwei say this, the smile in Ziming Xuan's eyes deepened. He was about to speak when Zhou Zhuwei released the mouse and shifted her gaze away from the screen. "Was this completed this year?" she asked. Ziming Xuan replied, "Yes." Zhou Zhuwei asked again, "Nothing else?" Ziming Xuan paused and said, "Regarding the last tech exhibition, I conducted some technical analysis on the exhibits displayed there. Would you like to hear it?" Zhou Zhuwei nodded. "Go ahead." Ziming Xuan began his technical explanation. He spoke for more than 10 minutes straight. During that time, Shen Qingli came back once, saying she still had an important call to make. Just as Ziming Xuan was about to continue, Zhou Zhuwei suddenly looked up and said, "That's enough." Ziming Xuan stopped. Zhou Zhuwei stood up and gave her final evaluation. "Your foundational knowledge is fairly solid, but it still doesn't meet my standard for a student." Ziming Xuan was stunned, then clenched his fist. This was not the answer he wanted. Zhou Zhuwei pushed the door open and was about to leave. Ziming Xuan quickly stepped forward and said, "Ms. Zhou, then how do you think I should improve?" Zhou Zhuwei paused and said coldly, "Do more research and pay more attention to new developments in the field." As she finished speaking, Shen Qingli returned. Before Shen Qingli could speak, Zhou Zhuwei said, "I've done what I should do. I'll contact you again in a few days." After saying that, Zhou Zhuwei left directly. Shen Qingli looked at Zi Mingxuan. Seeing that his expression wasn't very good, she asked, "The result wasn't great." Zi Mingxuan nodded calmly. "Not really." He told her the whole process and the suggestions. Shen Qingli said, "Your ability is indeed quite good. I also think her advice is quite valuable." Zi Mingxuan paused, realizing it was his attitude toward the profession that made Zhou Zhuwei refuse him, rather than a lack of ability. Zi Mingxuan's mood improved considerably. Shen Qingli comforted him. "You can try again another time." Zhou Zhuwei returned to the villa. At the villa, Su Wanqing and I had just finished buying and washing the ingredients, and were preparing to cook hot pot. Seeing her return, Su Wanqing said in surprise, "You're back so soon." Zhou Zhuwei took off her coat. Her tone still indifferent. Su Wanqing glanced at me as I came out of the kitchen with bowls and chopsticks, and asked curiously, "So, we didn't gain a new junior fellow, right?" Zhou Zhuwei ignored her, took the bowl I handed her, and sat down. Silence meant the answer was no. Su Wanqing smiled, raising her brows at me. Su Wanqing brought out the meat, and asked again, "Teacher, then what level do you think he is at in this field?" Zhou Zhuwei spoke slowly. "Slightly above the level of an excellent PhD graduate." After a whole day of exhaustion, I went home, took a shower, and fell asleep early. The next day, there was something at Zhendu that required us to handle. After arriving at Zhendu, Su Wanqing and I had just coordinated some technical issues when Wenruo Tong and Yao Weian walked in. They both looked surprised upon seeing me. A staff member from Zhendu explained, "Mr. Jiang is not an employee of Zhendu. He is a technician from Changmo. He came today. He's here to help handle system technical issues." Sensing that someone seemed to be looking at me, I turned my head and saw Wenruo Tong and Yao Weian. I only glanced once, then calmly withdrew my gaze. Yao Weian smiled. "He's ignoring us, isn't he?" Wenruo Tong was about to speak when Zi Mingxuan walked in from outside. Seeing us, Zi Mingxuan also looked slightly surprised and stopped. Upon seeing Zi Mingxuan, Wenruo Tong greeted warmly, "Mr. Zi." Zi Mingxuan nodded and greeted calmly, "Ms. Wen, Ms. Yao." Wenruo Tong stepped forward. "Mr. Zi works at Zhendu?" Zi Mingxuan waved his hand. "No. I specialize in algorithms. Recently I wanted to improve myself, so I came here to learn from everyone." Wenruo Tong smiled. "Mr. Zi, you're truly diligent and eager to learn." Zi Mingxuan said modestly, "You flatter me, Ms. Wen. It's precisely because I've realized my shortcomings that I need to study harder." Seeing Wenruo Tong and the others arrive at Zhendu, the project team, another person in charge, Mr. Zhang, came over. Wenruo Tong and the others greeted Su Wanqing, then went with Mr. Zhang to discuss business elsewhere. Zi Mingxuan stayed on Su Wanqing's side. He naturally noticed me as well, but after just one glance, he withdrew his gaze indifferently and focused his attention back on Su Wanqing. "Ms. Su, did you just arrive?" Su Wanqing, while lowering her head and taking notes, replied casually, "I've been here for about half an hour." "Mr. Zi, it seems like you've been here quite a while." Zi Mingxuan replied, "I arrived at Zhendu this morning. I've been busy most of the day and got a bit tired. So I went upstairs to get some water and rest for a bit." This going upstairs to drink water and rest naturally referred to going to Shen Qingli's office. Hearing this, Su Wanqing paused, her tone turning slightly colder. "Really? So President Shen is also at Zhendu?" Zi Mingxuan shook his head. "No, he was under review. That is to say, even if Shen Qingli didn't come, he could still freely enter and leave Shen Qingli's office on his own. Shen Qingli clearly had no secrets from him." Su Wanqing didn't say anything more. Instead, she took her notebook and stepped forward to me, pointing at the content on it. I glanced at it and nodded, then turned around and continued my work. Seeing this, Zi Mingxuan asked, "Did something go wrong? Can I take a look?" Su Wanqing said coldly, "Mr. Zi, I'm working. It's not convenient." Zi Mingxuan was about to speak when I walked towards Su Wanqing and told her a set of data. The moment Zi Mingxuan saw me walk over, his gaze turned cold. I hadn't intended to look at him, but seeing him staring at me coldly, After finishing speaking with Su Wanqing, I returned him a cold glance, then went back with Su Wanqing to continue handling the data. Zi Mingxuan still had another set of data to process. He returned to the meeting room. When Ruo Tong and the others were refining contract details, seeing Zi Mingxuan come back, when Ruo Tong asked, "Do you know that man?" Hearing her ask about me, Zi Mingxuan's fingers tightened slightly on the keyboard. He said expressionlessly, "Not really." "Why?" When Ruo Tong glanced towards Su Wanqing and me, and said, "From the way he talks with Su Wanqing, he seems quite capable." Zi Mingxuan replied calmly, "Not sure, but I heard he only has a bachelor's degree." Hearing this, when Ruo Tong's expression changed slightly, her attitude toward me shifted from neutral to dismissive. Su Wanqing had a moment of free time and glanced into the meeting room through the glass. After looking for a moment, she leaned close to my ear and said, "That girl." When Ruo Tong likes Zi Mingxuan, my mind was still processing data when I heard her say that. After pausing for a second, I reacted. I said calmly, "Probably." After that, I pulled Su Wanqing to continue working, telling her not to gossip. After all, the sooner we finished, the sooner we could get off work. At this moment, Zi Mingxuan ran into a problem and paused. He wanted to ask Su Wanqing for advice, but when he looked over, he found that, whether it was Su Wanqing or the technical staff at Sundu, they were all listening to me attentively. Anyone who didn't know better would think my technical skills were amazing. Thinking of this, he withdrew his gaze. Su Wanqing and I kept working until after 5 p.m. Before things were mostly settled, the contract between Zhongqing and Zundu was also finalized. Mr. Jin invited Su Wanqing and me into the meeting room to meet when Ruo Tong and the others, as things were nearly done. Mr. Jin then said, "It's getting late. How about we have a meal together?" When Ruo Tong's heart stirred as she looked at Zi Mingxuan, Zi Mingxuan seemed not to notice his gaze and said, "Sorry, Kingli will come pick me up from Sheng Group later. We have other plans. I won't be joining. Enjoy your meal." Hearing that Zi Mingxuan wouldn't go, when Ruo Tong instantly lost interest in the dinner. "I also have something to do. Let's do it another time," she said. Hearing when Ruo Tong say this, Zi Mingxuan wasn't surprised and showed no expression. The more Su Wanqing watched, the more she felt that when Ruo Tong was interested in Zi Mingxuan, and she could also tell that when Ruo Tong didn't want to go, because Zi Mingxuan wasn't going. Since both when Ruo Tong and Zi Mingxuan declined, Mr. Jin also felt a bit awkward and asked, "Ms. Su, what about you?" Su Wanqing held her teacup, clinked it lightly with mine and smiled. "I don't have time, right, Jiangchan?" Zi Mingxuan noticed that Su Wanqing treated me really well. He frowned. Although when Ruo Tong and the others said they had no time to eat, the matter was already mostly settled. So they went downstairs with Su Wanqing and me to prepare to leave. At that moment, Zi Mingxuan received a call. After hanging up, he said, "Kingli will be here soon. I'll go with you." When the group reached downstairs, Sheng Kingli was already waiting there. Seeing us, she got out of the car and greeted Wen Ruo Tong and Su Wanqing. She also glanced at me, but didn't say anything. And when she got out of the car, Zi Mingxuan stood beside her. The two of them really did look like a couple. When Ruo Tong was chatting with Sheng Kingli, Su Wanqing curled her lips slightly and said coldly, "President Shen, we have dinner plans, so we'll be leaving first." Sheng Kingli replied calmly, "Take care, Miss Su." Su Wanqing and I left first. After having dinner with Chairman Jin and the others, I drove home. As soon as I arrived, Bai Jian called. I picked up. "President Bai," Bai Jian said, "the contract has been signed. You can call your uncle to confirm. After confirming, call me back." Before I could reply, she had already hung up. I didn't expect Bai Jian to act so quickly, but I still didn't fully trust her. After thinking for a moment, I called Jiang Chongsheng. "Uncle, has the company started a project with the Bai family?" Jiang Chongsheng replied happily, "Yes. The company has made progress." "But how did you know about this?" I brushed it off casually. "I heard it from someone." After saying a few more words of concern, I hung up. Then I called Bai Jian. She picked up almost instantly. I said, I'm free this weekend. Bai Jian smiled. All right. Do you want to arrange the time, or should I? You arrange it. The next morning, just as I was about to go out, Bai Jian called again. She invited me to go skiing on Saturday with Meow Meow. I agreed. After hanging up, I went to the company. On Saturday morning, after breakfast, I drove to the ski resort. When I arrived, Bai Jian and Meow Meow were already waiting. As soon as she saw me, Meow Meow let go of Bai Jian's hand and happily ran toward me. When she jumped into my arms, I gently hugged her, looking at her smiling face. I touched her cheek. Meow Meow seems to have grown taller and prettier. Give yourself a compliment. Meow Meow nodded happily. I've been eating well. I smiled at her words. Suddenly, Meow Meow took something out from her pocket. Uncle, this is for you. It was a crystal keychain. A miniature pink cat bag with a small white kitten inside. It looked very similar to the one Jiang Nianian had on her backpack zipper, just a different color. Bai Jian seemed to often take Meow Meow to play with Jiang Nianian, so it wasn't strange they had similar keychains. I crouched down and didn't ask further. It's very beautiful. Uncle likes it a lot. Thank you, Meow Meow. Hearing that I liked it, Meow Meow became even happier. She pulled me inside. Uncle, let's go skiing. After putting on our gear and goggles, we started skiing. Meow Meow wasn't very good yet, so I guided her slowly. But there were too many people that day. After just over an hour, we were hit by two girls. Meow Meow was fine, but Bai Jian crashed into me. I instinctively wrapped my arm around her waist, pulling her firmly into my arms. Suddenly pressed against my chest, Bai Jian froze for a moment. She immediately felt uncomfortable. She tried to push me away, but found her foot hurt. I didn't let go, but asked with concern, Did you twist your ankle? Did you sprain it? Bai Jian replied softly, I think so. She called the staff over to look after Meow Meow, while I bent down and carried her into the building. I set Bai Jian down, and the doctor waiting nearby checked. It turned out to be just a mild sprain. Apply some treatment, and she'd be fine soon. At that moment, someone in the distance looked at us. What are you looking at? Sun Jian said uncertainly. I think I saw someone familiar. When he stepped forward to take a closer look, the person had already put on a hat and goggles again and left. At noon, we left the ski resort and went to a nearby restaurant. Bai Jian handed me the menu. At that moment, Meow Meow suddenly remembered something. Uncle, what's your name? I replied while looking at the menu. My name is Jiang Chun. Meow Meow nodded. Uncle Jiang. Maybe she was too tired from skiing. Before finishing her meal, Meow Meow started dozing off. Bai Jian held Meow Meow in her arms. I had also finished eating. I put down my chopsticks and said, Let's call it a day. But Bai Jian didn't stand up immediately. Instead, she looked at me and asked, Can we meet again next time? I nodded slightly. Sure. Since Meow Meow was asleep, I turned and left. Watching me drive away, Bai Jian stood there for a while before getting into her car. When they got home, Meow Meow woke up. Uncle Jiang left again? Holding her, Bai Jian suddenly said, Meow Meow, from now on, just call him Uncle. Don't call him Uncle Jiang, okay? And keep Uncle's name a secret for Annie. Don't tell anyone else, alright? Meow Meow nodded obediently. Not long after I left the ski resort, I received a call from Zhou Jimin. He asked me to join him for dinner. After getting the address, I headed over. More than 10 minutes later, Zhou Jimin called again, cursing. Do you know who I ran into here? I paused. Recently, the only people who could make Zhou Jimin speak like that seemed to be Shang Qingli and Zi Mingquan. Zhou Jimin continued. He brought the Zi family here to look at houses. I looked ahead and responded calmly. I had arrived. You Lian Yu. I parked the car and told Zhou Jimin I was there. Then send him my location. Just as I was about to get out, I saw Madame Zi, Zilai Hai and Sun Yuking, the three of them walking toward the parking lot. All of them were smiling, clearly in a very good mood. I got out of the car, but they entered the parking lot from the other side and didn't see me. A few minutes later, When I arrived at the sales office entrance, I happened to run into Shen Qingli and Ziming Chuan. They were surrounded by 7 or 8 senior staff. As they walked out, when she saw me, Shen Qingli glanced sideways at me. Ziming Chuan had his arm around Shen Qingli's shoulder and also gave me a cold look. I calmly withdrew my gaze. After entering the sales office, I went straight to Zhou Jiming. When he saw me, he gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, "The houses here start at 300 million. I just heard from the staff that the villa Shen Qingli bought for the Z family is over 600 million. Zhou Jiming looked at my expression and added, "And I also heard that the reason they came here was because Ziming Chuan's mother liked the style here." My eyes flickered slightly. "No wonder when I saw Sun Yuqing just now," I said calmly. "I'm going to the restroom." At that moment, voices suddenly came from outside. Staff from the sales office. "President Shen has such good taste. Her boyfriend is so handsome. President Shen treats her boyfriend very well. They're not even married yet. A villa worth over 600 million, and she just bought it for her boyfriend's family." When I came out of the restroom, it had already been 10 minutes. After I had dinner with Zhou Jiming, I suddenly wanted to go to the sanatorium, but thinking about Jiang Yan's condition and what the director said about not seeing acquaintances, even though I had already driven to the entrance, I still didn't go in. After returning home, I locked myself in my room and continued working. I don't know how long passed when my phone rang again. It was a call from Shen Qingli. I glanced at it, wrote down the data beside me, and ignored it. The call ended on its own. A few minutes later, it rang again. I still didn't answer. Shen Qingli sent a message. "Grandma wants us to go back to the old house for dinner." I still didn't reply. Seeing that I didn't respond, Shen Qingli held her phone in silence for a while. I ordered takeout. Just after I finished eating around 7, Madame Shen called. I could ignore Shen Qingli's calls, but Madame Shen had been kind to my family, so I had to answer hers. "Hello, Grandma." Madame Shen spoke slowly. "Jiang Chen, I heard from Qingli that you've been busy. When will you be done?" Since Shen Qingli had already covered for me, I said directly, "I'll be busy these couple of days." "Sorry, Grandma. I'm afraid I won't have time to visit you these days." Madame Shen said gently, "That's all right. Grandma is fine. I'm just worried you might be overworking yourself." "Grandma, I know my limits," Madame Shen said. "That's good. Tomorrow when Qingli goes back, I'll have her bring you something tasty. Make sure you eat more, all right?" After hanging up, Madame Shen looked at her granddaughter sitting on the sofa and said with a pout, "Next time, if Jiang Chen still doesn't come back with you, then don't come back either." Shen Qingli raised her eyebrows. "Then I'll leave." After hanging up, I went back into work mode. At around 9 p.m., Su Wanqing called. "Want to go out?" Half an hour later, I arrived at the bar. Su Wanqing came out to the entrance to pick me up. "Want a drink?" I paused and said, "Sure." Su Wanqing leaned closer and looked at me. "Bad mood?" I lowered my gaze. "Better now." Su Wanqing didn't ask further and ordered me a blue, low-alcohol cocktail. I held it, sipping, while listening to Su Wanqing chatting with her friends. At the upstairs bar, Yao Weian was looking at us and said calmly, "So it's him with Su Wanqing." The woman beside her followed her gaze and paused when she saw me. Yao Weian smiled. "Your type?" Her friend didn't answer and only asked, "You know him?" Yao Weian explained, "This is the guy I told you about the other day. The one when Ruo Tong liked at first, but lost interest in right after." Led by Su Wanqing, we entered the dance floor. After swaying to the music for over a minute, I gradually got used to it, relaxing and gently moving my body. At that moment, I felt my phone vibrate. I didn't stop, but took out my phone and glanced at it. As soon as I saw the caller ID, I immediately stopped. Seeing my expression change, Su Wanqing leaned over to take a look, and her scalp instantly went numb. "It's actually the teacher." Su Wanqing and I quickly left the dance floor. As we were leaving, I casually looked up and saw Yao Weian and the woman beside her. Yao Weian and I immediately averted our gazes. But Su Wanqing had gone out as well. She was at the bar entrance answering a call. As soon as I spoke, my tone turned timid. Teacher. Zhou Zhuwei quickly said, come pick me up at noon tomorrow. I was stunned, but the call had already been hung up. The next day at noon, I drove to Zhou Zhiwei's villa to pick her up. After she got in the car, I asked, Teacher, where are we going? Zhou Zhuwei gave an address. Half an hour later, we arrived at the restaurant. Zhou Zhuwei and I were led into a private room. When we pushed the door open, there were already 2 people inside. They were 2 imposing middle-aged men. Seeing us enter, they both stood up. You're here, Zhou Zhuwei. Still wearing a calm expression, she introduced us. Wen Shichu, Chen Wang, my student, Jiang Chun. I had seen them in the news. One held significant power in the military. The other was a major figure in politics. But when they saw me, their attitude was gentle. They shook my hand and said, we've heard a lot about you. Although I was a bit busy, I still calmly shook hands with them and politely said, that's what I should be saying to you both. Wen Shichu and Chen Wang smiled and gestured for me to sit. After I sat down, Wen Shichu said, we've known about you for years. We've always hoped Academician Zhou would introduce you to us, but everyone has been busy, so we never had the chance. In the past few days, our team has been studying the system you developed recently, and it just so happened we all had time these days, so we thought we'd have a meal together and meet you. After the pleasantries, I began chatting with them about systems, about chips, about energy, while Zhou Zhuwei sat beside us, quietly eating and drinking tea, rarely joining the conversation. After more than an hour, when Shichu poured me a cup of tea, I quickly took the teacup, and when Shichu set down the teapot, his gaze was deep, full of experience. But when he looked at me, it was gentle. If I remember correctly, Jiang Sheng is in his 20s this year, right? I nodded. I'm 25. As soon as Wen Shichu asked that, Chen Wang already understood what he meant. He cut in and asked, have a girlfriend? I paused, then said, I'm married. Wen Shichu and Chen Wang were clearly surprised. But they were no ordinary people. When I mentioned being married, a trace of emotion flashed in my eyes. Clearly, there were some issues in my marriage, which meant it might end in divorce. Their daughters might still have a chance. Zhou Zhuwei listened, and finally raised her head, casting them a cold glance. After the meal, as soon as I got home, Su Wanqing called me. After learning why Zhou Zhuwei had met me, she said calmly, Wen Shichu and Chen Wang, huh? I already know them. That Wen Ruotong is Wen Shichu's daughter. With such an impressive father, I really don't know why his daughter went blind at such a young age. I truly didn't expect that Wen Ruotong was Wen Shichu's daughter, but it had nothing to do with me. On Tuesday, Zundu's autonomous vehicle registration, Su Wanqing and I went there early in the morning. When we arrived, Wen Ruotong and Yao Weiyan were already there. Seeing that my ex-wife had already prepared everything, yet the staff still hadn't started testing, Su Wanqing asked, why hasn't it started yet? President Quan explained, President Shen will personally come to observe the test. We'll officially begin once she arrives. Su Wanqing suddenly thought of something and asked, right? Why haven't we seen Mr. Z today? President Quan replied, didn't Mr. Z say he wanted to improve himself? President Shen said the fastest and best way to improve is to lead a team and work on projects yourself. So last week, President Shen already handed over the previous companies. An earlier project was reassigned and reorganized. These past couple of days, Mr. Z he should be called Director Z now. Director Z has formed a team and is currently upstairs in a meeting. Su Wanqing tilted her head and glanced at me, while I simply lowered my head and took notes, showing no reaction to what Director Quan had said. She sighed and patted my head. I brushed her hand away. Don't mess around. Su Wanqing smiled and said, not bad. From the sound of it, you've already stopped caring. That puts me at ease. At that moment, Shen Qingli arrived. Along with her were Bai Jian and Ji Qingyu. Bai Jian and Ji Qingyu clearly didn't expect that I would be there. Both showed surprise upon seeing me. I, however, showed no expression, just glanced at them before looking away. Shen Qingli politely came over to greet us. Director Quan asked, President Shen, can we begin now? Shen Qingli raised her wrist to check the time, Wait for one more person. I'll go upstairs to take a look. Please wait. With that, she left. I knew the person she was waiting for was Ziming Xuan. Su Wanqing had clearly realized it too, and almost cursed it under her breath. Soon, Shen Qingli and Ziming Xuan came downstairs. Accompanying them was Sun Jian. Director Sun wasn't surprised to see me, because Ziming Xuan had already told him in advance. Seeing that I was clearly Shen Qingli's husband, yet only treated like a subordinate, waiting for him to come downstairs before work could continue. The way he looked at me carried a trace of mockery and smugness. I indifferently looked away. Ziming Xuan, however, politely said, "Sorry to keep everyone waiting." But when he apologized, he only looked toward Wenruo Tong and Su Wanqing. Clearly, I was not included in his apology. Wenruo Tong smiled and said, "It was only a few minutes. It's fine." Su Wanqing stood up and said coolly, "President Wen is truly generous. Since you're here, then stop wasting our time. Let's get started." Shen Qingli remained polite. "It was our fault, President Su." Su Wanqing snorted coldly and pulled me along as she left the meeting room first. The group followed, with Shen Qingli and Ziming Xuan at the center. As they arrived at the test track, the staff respectfully reported, "President Shen. Mr. Z, everything is ready." From their attitude, they clearly treated Ziming Xuan as the boss. After the test drivers successfully completed one round, the staff asked Shen Qingli and Ziming Xuan if they wanted to try it. Shen Qingli agreed. She and Ziming Xuan got into the same car. By the time they finished, half an hour had passed. Shen Qingli said calmly, "Thank you for your hard work today, everyone. Let's have a meal together later." Wenruo Tong readily agreed. Su Wanqing curled her lips and said indifferently, "Sorry, we don't have time. You all enjoy yourselves. We have something to do, so we'll leave first." Seeing this, Shen Qingli said to Director Quan, "Please see President Su and Mr. Jiang off." Hearing this, Su Wanqing pulled me along and left first. Yao Weian lowered her voice and said to Wenruo Tong, "I feel like Su Wanqing really doesn't like President Shen." They had already noticed it the last time they met here. When we got into the car after leaving, Su Wanqing was still fuming. She seemed to think of something and asked me, "Who is that guy standing behind Ziming Xuan? The way he looked at you wasn't friendly. Do you know him?" I replied, "He's Ziming Xuan's cousin." Su Wanqing said angrily, "It's one thing for Shen Qingli to bring Ziming Xuan into Zundu, but now, she's even bringing his family into Zundu as well. At this rate, I wouldn't be surprised if Zundu ends up with the Z names someday." Su Wanqing felt she shouldn't say more. If she kept talking, she would only get angrier. When I got home, I was just about to go into the bathroom for a shower when my phone rang. It was a call from Shen Qingli. I didn't answer and went straight into the bathroom with my clothes. When I came out, I saw that Shen Qingli had sent a message. "Nyanian has a parent-teacher meeting tomorrow." After seeing it, I replied, "I'm not available tomorrow." At that time, Shen Qingli was busy, and Jiang Nyanian was playing with Shen Qingli's phone. When she saw my reply, she happily said, "Mom, Dad said he's not available tomorrow. Does that mean I can ask Uncle Z to go to school and attend the meeting for me?" Shen Qingli responded, Mom will go tomorrow too." Jiang Nyanian jumped up from the sofa, dancing happily with excitement. The next day, while I was working, Jiang Nyanian's homeroom teacher suddenly sent a message. "Nyanian's father, aren't you coming to the meeting today?" I replied, "I have something to do, so I won't be going." After a while, she sent me a photo. In the photo, Shen Qingli and Ziming Xuan were sitting together. The teacher seemed worried on my behalf. I replied expressionlessly, "I understand. It's fine, thank you, Ms. Yang." I put down my phone and continued working. Before I knew it, it was Friday again. Bai Jiang called and said Miao Miao wanted to go camping and sleep in a tent. The heaters and everything were already prepared. We just needed to go. I agreed. At around 2 p.m. on Saturday, I drove to the campsite. When I arrived, Bai Jian and Miao Miao had just gotten there too. It had snowed for several days recently. The mountains were covered in snow. When I arrived, Miao Miao came over and pulled me to build a snowman together. She had even prepared a scarf for the snowman. Bai Jian walked over to me and crouched down beside me. "You went to work at Changmu?" she asked. I was still shaping the snowman without looking up, and simply replied, She asked curiously, when did you go? I answered calmly, it's been a while. Bai Jian wanted to know more details, but it was obvious I didn't want to say more, so she dropped the topic and slowly said, 5 times in total. I paused, then understood. She meant I should accompany Meow Meow 5 times. After finishing the big snowman, Meow Meow even asked Bai Jian to take photos. Bai Jian held her phone and looked at my smile in the camera. Taking several shots in a row, the sky had completely darkened, and the temperature in the mountains kept dropping. Seeing Meow Meow and me sitting close together, eating and chatting, Bai Jian turned and went into the tent and brought out 2 thick coats, one large and one small, to put over us. After finishing the barbecue, the bonfire party was about to begin. So, we went over. As soon as we arrived, some passers-by couldn't help but say, this family of 3 really looks stunning. I paused and explained, we're not a family of 3. They laughed cheerfully, thinking that even if we were now, we might become one in the future. After a while, Meow Meow went off to play with kids her age. Bai Jian spoke first. Have you adapted to Changmu? I was idly playing with dry grass, and upon hearing that, I replied calmly, I've adapted. During that time, she took a few calls. By the time she returned, it was already late. At night, Meow Meow insisted on sleeping with me. Bai Jian looked at me and asked for my opinion. I agreed. Meow Meow happily nestled into my arms. Although we slept together, it was only in the same tent. We still slept separately in our own sleeping bags. Meow Meow's health was indeed a bit weak. The wind was too strong last night. She probably caught a chill. When she woke up the next day, she had a cold. I hadn't slept well last night either, so I wasn't in great condition. Bai Jian decided to take Meow Meow to the hospital. I wanted to drive back myself. Meow Meow acted spoiled and wanted me to go to the hospital with her. Seeing her weak and sickly state, I agreed and got into Bai Jian's car with her. The car arrived at the hospital entrance. Bai Jian carried Meow Meow out and said to me, I'll have someone send you back. I shook my head. No need. I can drive back myself. Bai Jian didn't insist. Just as I was about to get home, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Sheng Qingli. Grandma is going to visit your grandmother later and wants the 3 of us to go back to the Jiang family together. This message couldn't be ignored. I picked up my phone and called Sheng Qingli. She answered quickly. I'll go pick up Nianian now and head over. Sheng Qingli was silent for 2 seconds before saying. I hung up the phone and turned the car around toward Sheng Qingli's villa. When I arrived, Jiang Nianian was already carrying her backpack, ready to go. Ready. Sheng Qingli looked up at me, then suddenly crouched down. Did you not sleep well last night? I didn't expect her to ask that, and replied coldly, I didn't intend to elaborate. The housekeeper, concerned, chimed in. Was it insomnia? We have high-quality incense here that helps with sleep. I can put some in your room later. Only then did I explain, my sleep is usually fine. I just went camping yesterday, and I wasn't used to sleeping outside. The housekeeper frowned. What's so fun about camping in winter? Don't catch a cold. I smiled and said, winter camping lets you have snowball fights by the bonfire, build snowmen, and play hide-and-seek. It's actually more fun. Hearing this, Sheng Qingli put down the newspaper and looked at me thoughtfully. Jiang Nianian listened eagerly, her curiosity growing even stronger. Camping sounds so fun. Dad didn't even take me. She dragged her backpack and jumped off the sofa. After a huff, she ran straight upstairs. I frowned as I watched. Before I could speak, Sheng Qingli put down the newspaper and said, Nianian, come back. Her tone didn't sound angry at all. Yet Jiang Nianian immediately stopped. She pursed her lips and turned around, standing still. Sheng Qingli glanced at her. Jiang Nianian lowered her head and walked back reluctantly with her backpack. She grabbed Sheng Qingli's hand and said sweetly, Mom, can you come too? Sheng Qingli didn't look at me and gently tapped Jiang Nianian's nose. Mom has things to do. Be good and listen to your dad. Jiang Nianian said unwillingly, got it. Then glanced at me. When she walked over, she reached out her hand to me. This was her way of making up with me. I held her hand, and after greeting the housekeeper, we left. When we arrived at the Jiang residence, old Madam Shen had already been there for a while, seeing that only we had come and not Shen Qingli. Old Madam Shen's face immediately darkened. Where is Qingli? Still busy, I asked softly. Old Madam Shen. She angrily picked up her phone to call Shen Qingli. Grandma knew that Shen Qingli and I were about to divorce, and felt there was no need for Shen Qingli to come. She stopped old Madam Shen and said, "She's busy with work. I understand. Don't force her." After entering, Jiang Nianian went upstairs to play with Jiang Yuni, while I stayed to chat with the two elderly ladies. Suddenly, I sneezed, and a chill ran down my spine. Both elderly ladies immediately showed concern. "Are you okay? Did you catch a cold?" I grabbed a tissue and wiped my nose, and said, "Maybe. I probably caught a chill last night. It's just that my symptoms aren't as obvious as Miao Miao's." Old Madam Jiang and old Madam Shen had been friends for many years. Regarding what happened at the birthday banquet and the matter between Shen Qingli and Zi Mingchuan, I didn't mention a single word to old Madam Shen. The two of them just chatted happily. After sitting for a while, Zhou Jiming called me, saying he had run into Shen Qingli and the Zi family again, and that Shen Qingli was dining with them. Then he asked where I was. I said, "I'm at my grandmother's place, with Nianian and Grandma Shen." Zhou Jiming immediately understood. "So, Shen Qingli isn't accompanying you back to the Jiang family, but instead went to accompany Zi Mingchuan's family?" I didn't respond. After hanging up, I sneezed again. My aunt and Mingxu worried I had caught a cold, and made me a bowl of ginger soup. After drinking it, my head felt even heavier, and before long, I fell asleep. When I woke up, I realized I had a fever and a high one. Jiang Nianian came close to me, looking a bit worried. "Dad, you're sick." Old Madam Shen was also very concerned and wanted to take me back to the Shen residence to have their regular traditional doctor check on me, saying the old doctor worked quickly. Grandma also felt my illness had come too suddenly and shouldn't be delayed, so she asked me to go with old Madam Shen back to the old residence. After the doctor arrived, he prescribed some medicine. I drank a bowl and went upstairs to sleep again. When I woke up again, the heaviness in my body and head had eased considerably. I opened my eyes and saw the bedside lamp was on. Turning my head, I saw Shen Qingli sitting there reading. I paused before realizing this was her room in the old residence, the place where she had grown up. Perhaps hearing the movement, Shen Qingli turned and looked over. "You're awake." I picked up the coat beside me and put it on. I got out of bed like that. Shen Qingli brought me a glass of water and handed it to me. I paused for 2 seconds before taking it. Without saying thank you, Shen Qingli didn't say anything either and reached out to touch my forehead. My head felt heavy, but my reaction wasn't slow. I dodged it, making her pause. She withdrew her hand, stood up and said, "Mr. Zhang is still downstairs. I'll have him come up and take a look at you." Without waiting for my response, she went downstairs. A few minutes later, Mr. Zhang, the old madam, Shen Qingli, and Jiang Nianian all entered the room. Mr. Zhang examined me and said I had improved a lot, but still needed to take the medicine. He said I had emotional stress, so I easily got sick when catching a chill, and needed to nourish my body. I nodded as I listened. Old Madam Shen told Shen Qingli to go downstairs and bring up the food prepared for me. Shen Qingli turned and went downstairs, and soon came back with the food. Old Madam Shen and Mr. Zhang left, but Shen Qingli did not. While I ate beside her, she sat nearby reading. I glanced at it and realized it was the same book I had read earlier at the hot spring resort. I hadn't noticed before, but now I realized she hadn't returned it to me. I frowned. Shen Qingli smiled and said, "I read it for half an hour that day, and found some of your ideas quite interesting. It gave me some new inspiration, so I took it and flipped through it when I have time." I ignored her. Shen Qingli rested her chin on her hand and looked at me. "After all these years, you still don't even know how to argue." I turned my face away. She sighed and said, "All right, I won't tease you anymore. Eat." In the divorce agreement, I clearly stated that I want nothing, no division of property, and no claim over Nianian's custody. I thought she would soon notify me to go collect the divorce certificate. But ever since I left the divorce agreement and returned, it's been about 3 months now. Yet there has been no movement on her side. Thinking of this, I raised my head, about to ask her, when there was a knock on the door, followed by Shen Shinran's voice, "Brother-in-law, I heard you're sick. Are you feeling better now?" Before I could speak, Shen Qingli said, "Come in." Hearing her voice, Shen Shinran walked in and first greeted Shen Qingli. I hadn't interacted with her much. Then Shen Shinran's gaze fell on me. I knew she cared about me, but didn't know what to say. So I spoke first. "I'm much better now." Shen Shinran nodded. "That's good." I smiled. "Haven't been back here in a while?" Shen Shinran smiled. "Yes. I miss the food here, so I came back for a visit. I just got back and heard from Grandma that you had a fever." At this moment, old Madame Shen came upstairs. Seeing my complexion had improved, she felt a bit relieved. "Is the soup in the kitchen ready? Old Zhang said you can drink it too. Come downstairs and have some. Or should I have Qingli bring it up to you?" I didn't want to stay in the room, so I went downstairs with them. After sitting down, I took the soup, handed to me by the housekeeper. Shen Qingli sat beside me, but her phone received a message, perhaps to avoid me seeing it. She shifted slightly away from me and began replying. I silently drank my soup. The old madam couldn't stand it. "Can it wait until after you finish your soup?" Shen Qingli explained. "It'll only take a moment." I still caught a glimpse that she was chatting with Ziming Xuan. It seemed to be about project matters. After finishing, I went to the living room and sat down and picked up a newspaper to read out of boredom. I shook my head. Shen Shinran sat down beside me, then looked at me. I noticed and asked, "What's wrong?" Shen Shinran awkwardly said, "I have a few physics problems I don't understand. I wanted my sister to teach me, but she said she's busy and told me to ask you." I paused but said nothing, and took her test papers. Shen Shinran's grades were actually quite good, and her foundation was solid. I took the 2 sheets and briefly organized the logic for her, and she immediately understood. After understanding, Shen Shinran didn't mind her posture and crouched by the coffee table to write. After finishing the problems, she put away her papers and pen and said, "Done. I can finally play on my phone." I smiled and put down the newspaper I had nearly finished. Shen Shinran leaned closer and whispered, "Brother-in-law, my idol participated in a car race recently. I have a recording. Do you want to watch it?" The smile on my face faded slightly, and I said, "No need. I'm not interested in racing." Shen Shinran had thought I was interested, so she was a bit surprised. "That day you watched for quite a while with binoculars. I thought you were interested too," I said. I saw a few acquaintances there that day. Seeing that I truly wasn't interested, Shen Shinran didn't try to persuade me further, and turned to continue watching Ziming Xuan's race replay. I glanced at it, then looked away and said, "I'm going upstairs to get a book." Shen Shinran said energetically, "Okay, brother-in-law. Even though you're feeling better, you still need to rest more." I nodded slightly. "I will." After saying that, I went upstairs. When I returned to the room, Shen Qingli wasn't there. I saw the book she had taken earlier lying on the table. I took it back and put it into my bag. Previously, when I occasionally stayed here overnight, I always bring 1 or 2 books with me. I looked around the room, but couldn't find them. I thought they might be in Jiang Nianian's room, so I turned and went to her room. Jiang Nianian didn't close the door. Sure enough, before I even reached her room, I heard Jiang Nianian's voice coming from inside. "Uncle Z, I'm so bored. Can you talk with me a little longer?" I stopped in my tracks. After 2 or 3 seconds, Jiang Nianian's cheerful voice sounded again. "I'll go downstairs to drink the soup in a bit. I won't skip it. Don't worry, Uncle Z." After finishing the call, Jiang Nianian didn't come out of the room right away. I was sick, and my throat felt uncomfortable, so I coughed twice and walked into Jiang Nianian's room. Only then did Jiang Nianian notice me. "Dad, why did you come out of your room?" "I just came to get a book." Jiang Nianian came over and took my hand. "Great-grandma said the soup is ready. Dad, do you want to go downstairs and drink it with me?" I waved my hand and said, Dad already drank it. You haven't had yours yet. Go drink it yourself. Jiang Nianian had just finished talking to Zi Mingxuan and was in a good mood, so she didn't notice anything off about me. Okay, then I'll go downstairs. After Jiang Nianian left, I found my book, but didn't return to my room. Instead, I took the book to the floor-to-ceiling window on the second floor. After sitting and reading for half an hour, old Madame Shen brought me the prepared herbal medicine. Jiangshan, so you're here. I put down the book and stood up. Grandma, why did you bring it up yourself? You could have just had someone call me downstairs to drink it. The old lady sat down on another sofa and said unhappily, You're not in good health. You should move around less. I originally wanted Kingli to bring it to you, but she's in the study typing on the keyboard. It's already the weekend. Who knows what she's still so busy with. Just now in the dining room, Shen Kingli was teaching Zi Mingxuan some things about the project. I think Shen Kingli felt that typing on the computer was more convenient. So she went into the study. I thought to myself, silently picked up the bowl and drank the medicine in one go. Old Madame Shen frowned as she watched. Such bitter medicine. Xiangshan, slow down. I put down the bowl. It's not that bitter. I took a sip of water to rinse my mouth. The old lady handed me a piece of candy. I didn't have dinner. It should be ready soon. I've already eaten. I can't eat dinner anymore. Old Madame Shen went downstairs to eat. More than half an hour later, old Madame Shen and Jiang Nianian came upstairs, but neither of them looked very happy. The old lady said coldly at this hour, Kingli still went to the company. Is she working herself to death? I had been absorbed in reading just now, and hadn't even noticed the sound of a car outside. For Shen Kingli to go out this late, it's probably something on Zi Mingxuan's side, some issue with the project. She went to help him handle it. Jiang Nianian lay on my lap, pouting. Mom didn't take me. Of course Shen Kingli wouldn't take her. If Shen Kingli took her along, everyone would know she was already married, and that her little princess was already this grown. Where would that leave Zi Mingxuan's dignity? I nudged Jiang Nianian. Get up from my lap. Dad's still not well. Go sit somewhere else. Jiang Nianian let out a small cry and sat to the side. Since I hadn't fully recovered, I couldn't hold on past 10 o'clock. I took a shower and fell asleep. The next morning, I learned that Shen Kingli hadn't come back last night. Dr. Zhang's medical skills are indeed quite good. I was almost fully recovered. The old lady had Dr. Zhang check on me again and prescribed to more doses of tonic medicine. I planned to go back to work as usual, seeing that she couldn't persuade me otherwise. The old lady said she didn't know how to prepare the medicine Dr. Zhang prescribed, so she asked me to come back here in the evening to drink it. She even handed me a spare key, as if she wouldn't let me leave if I refused. I had no choice but to agree. Back at the company, Su Wanqing pinched my cheek. Why do you look so pale? I was sick, I replied weakly. I had a high fever yesterday. What? You had a fever and still came to work today? I didn't think much of it. Isn't everything fine now? Su Wanqing patted me. We're going to Zundu later. Coming. While looking at the latest test data, I said. Of course. When we arrived at Zundu, we didn't chat much with President Quan and went straight into work mode. More than an hour later, most of the work was done and the time pressure eased. President Quan handed each of us a cup of coffee. Su Wanqing took a sip. This coffee is pretty good, even purer than what we had before. Your company's benefits are getting better and better. President Quan put on a gossiping look and said, Speaking of that, isn't it all thanks to Mr. Z? Su Wanqing rolled her eyes. I didn't expect this to have anything to do with Zi Mingxuan. She put down her coffee cup and glanced at me. I raised my eyebrows. I was thirsty, so I drank it anyway. President Quan's gossiping spirit was still running wild. Didn't President Shen assign a project to Mr. Z to handle entirely? It's probably his first time handling such a big project, so he's worried he might not do well. That's why his whole team has been working overtime on weekends. They were still working past 10 last night. President Quan continued praising him. Honestly, Mr. Z is quite serious and responsible. He didn't mess around just because he's President Shen's boyfriend, nor did he treat the project carelessly. Su Wanqing let out an irritated laugh. Isn't it? Because his ability isn't enough, that he needs so many people working overtime with him? President Quan understood what she meant. People all need to grow, don't they? She glanced at me and said indifferently that in Jiangsheng, this was our first time leading a major company project, Yet everything was handled in an orderly manner. President Kwon also said after these few interactions, she realized my capability was actually even stronger than Su Wanqing's. So, she didn't quite agree with what Su Wanqing said. President Kwon continued, at least his attitude is quite good. With that kind of attitude, plus President Shen spending money to train him, his future achievements definitely won't be low. At this point, President Kwon couldn't help sighing, honestly. Mr. Z really has a good life. Before Su Wanqing and I could react, President Kwon spoke mysteriously again. By the way, Mr. Z and his team worked overtime all weekend. Yet the project still hadn't progressed much, right? Last night, President Shen felt sorry for Mr. Z, so she came back to the company around 7 and helped him sort out the project. The core project finally made progress. And here's the key part. President Kwon lowered her voice and said, I heard that last night. President Shen and Mr. Z stayed in the upstairs office, and supposedly they haven't even gotten up yet. By the end, President Kwon even raised her eyebrows suggestively at Su Wanqing. Su Wanqing immediately understood what she meant. Just as she was about to say something, Zi Mingxuan appeared. He snorted coldly, aren't I already up? Seeing Zi Mingxuan, President Kwon cleared her throat. All right then. Zi Mingxuan looked in pretty good spirits, though he still seemed somewhat tired. Zi Mingxuan nodded at Su Wanqing, greeted her briefly, then quickly withdrew his gaze, and went to the meeting room. After Su Wanqing and I rested for a while, we continued working. As it neared lunchtime, I and Su Wanqing were discussing where to eat, when Shen Qingli walked in from outside. When Shen Qingli saw me, she immediately withdrew her gaze and went inside to find Zi Mingxuan. As she entered, the others in the meeting room looked at her. Everyone stood up to greet her, while Zi Mingxuan remained seated in his place, looking up at Shen Qingli with a smile. You're here. Shen Qingli responded and asked, how is it going? Zi Mingxuan smiled at her. We've sorted out some parts. It's starting to take shape. It's also thanks to your help last night. Shen Qingli smiled slightly, not bad. Then she said to the others, you've all worked hard these past 2 days. Let's have lunch together. Hearing this, everyone from Zi Mingxuan's team was delighted, feeling that working under him really came with many benefits. At this moment, Zi Mingxuan suddenly said, I'll go inform President Su, and the others as well. Shen Qingli clearly had no objection. All right. Zi Mingxuan stood up and walked out of the meeting room, heading towards Su Wanqing and me. President Kwon put on a big smile and immediately greeted him. Director Z. Zi Mingxuan smiled and said, President Shen is treating my team to lunch today. President Su, President Kwon, would you like to join? He completely ignored me. President Kwon naturally wanted to agree, so she looked at Su Wanqing and me. Su Wanqing immediately said, we appreciate Mr. Z's kindness, but we already have our own plans. Zi Mingxuan frowned and glanced at me, who was sitting nearby drinking water. When I saw him look over, I responded coldly. Zi Mingxuan withdrew his gaze. Since Su Wanqing had refused, he simply smiled and said in the same polite tone, all right, maybe next time. After that, he didn't look at me or President Kwon again and turned to leave. President Kwon felt somewhat ignored. Although Zi Mingxuan did have the right to be proud, Shen Qingli, as the real boss, was still quite polite and courteous to employees. A moment later, Shen Qingli walked over and politely shook hands with Su Wanqing, saying, we'll head out first. Next time, President Su, please do join us. Su Wanqing replied calmly, of course. Shen Qingli smiled, glanced at me, then turned and left. After lunch, Su Wanqing and I returned to the company. Around 6 p.m., Su Wanqing and I finished work and planned to leave. But Zi Mingxuan and his team still seemed busy, with no intention of getting off work. President Kwon said, I heard they'll continue working overtime tonight. Su Wanqing didn't react. She turned to me and said, let me treat you to dinner. I shook my head. No, I have other plans. The old madam has given instructions. I need to go back to the old residence and have dinner there. When I got home, Shen Qingli and Jiang Nianian had already returned. I didn't expect Shen Qingli to be back. I thought she would stay at the company with Ziming Xuan. When Shen Qingli saw me come back, she glanced at me, then continued typing on her computer, busy with her own work. At dinner, Shen Qingli sat beside me. Seeing her busy on her phone, I suddenly said, "Give time later. I have something to talk to you about." Shen Qingli didn't even look away from her phone. Okay, I felt relieved when she agreed. After dinner, the old madam had someone bring me my herbal medicine. Shen Qingli left the dining room to take a call. After I finished the medicine and stepped out, I heard the sound of a car. The old madam said angrily, "So rushed, who knows what she's going to do?" I frowned and guessed. She might have gone to help Ziming Xuan again. But she had promised to talk with me later. I hoped she would come back tonight. But Shen Qingli didn't return. After breakfast at the old residence, Su Wanqing and I went directly to meet at the ferry entrance. When we arrived, Ziming Xuan and his team were already there. Su Wanqing sneered, "So early. Didn't they work overtime last night?" President Quan said softly, "They did, but to catch up with the schedule, they came in early again this morning. They're really pushing themselves." After Su Wanqing's remark, I focused on my own work as well. More than an hour later, I was about to go to the restroom when Shen Qingli appeared. This time, she didn't seem to be here for Ziming Xuan. After entering, she waved from a distance to Ziming Xuan in the meeting room, then walked toward us. Su Wanqing spoke, "President Shen, is there something you need?" Shen Qingli said seriously, "I took some time these past 2 days to review your system, and it's indeed quite good. But I have a few ideas I'd like to discuss with both of you." Su Wanqing glanced at me. "President Shen, please go ahead." I paused, then said, "Sorry, I need to go to the restroom first." "You two can start." Su Wanqing and Shen Qingli both nodded. When I came back from the restroom, just a few steps away from Shen Qingli and Su Wanqing, a sharp voice suddenly came from the meeting room. "Director Z," followed by a burst of commotion. I was about to turn my head when I saw Shen Qingli's expression change drastically, and she rushed toward the meeting room. As she passed me, she bumped into me with such force that I almost fell. Su Wanqing hurried over and steadied me. "Are you okay?" I shook my head. "I'm fine." As I spoke, I happened to see Shen Qingli enter the meeting room. Several people were supporting Ziming Xuan as they hurried out and disappeared shortly after. Seeing this, President Quan asked in confusion, "Director Z, what happened?" President Zhang said he fainted, probably exhausted from frequent overtime. Thinking about how Shen Qingli had rushed past me earlier and almost knocked me over out of worry for Ziming Xuan, Su Wanqing's expression darkened as she gritted her teeth. "Serves him right even if he collapses. I really don't care." Seeing Su Wanqing worry that I might be upset, I smiled. "It's nothing serious. It doesn't hurt much anymore." Su Wanqing pursed her lips. "Go home and rest for a bit." I stood up, patted her shoulder, and said, "I'm not that fragile. Let's keep working." Su Wanqing responded softly, then couldn't help asking, "You've been dealing with the divorce for so long. Why isn't it finalized yet?" I sighed. "I'd like to know too." Last night, that's exactly what I wanted to talk to Shen Qingli about, but she suddenly left and forgot what she promised me. Su Wanqing urged, "Hurry up and get it done." At lunchtime, President Zhang came over and said Ziming Xuan was fine, and Shen Qingli had already taken him home to rest. I still hadn't finished the herbal medicine prepared by old Master Zhang. That evening after leaving the company, I went back to the old residence again, but Shen Qingli didn't return that night. I pursed my lips and thought for a moment, then still gave her a call, but no one answered, so I had no choice but to put down my phone. The next morning, Su Wanqing and I returned to the office. After handling some matters, we went back to Zundu again in the afternoon. After today, there probably wouldn't be much left to do at Zundu, and we wouldn't need to come here often anymore. When we arrived, Ziming Xuan and his team were finally not in a meeting, but he had already returned to work and still looked quite busy. Neither Su Wanqing nor I cared about Ziming Xuan. We just wanted to finish today's work as soon as possible and say goodbye to Zundu. Finally, around 5 p.m., our work was completed. From now on, there would rarely be a need for us to come here again. However, there were still matters to handle at Changmo, so Su Wanqing and I had to go back there. When we reached downstairs, we ran into Shen Qingli and Zi Mingxuan coming out of another elevator. Let's have a meal together sometime. Shen Qingli walked over and said, I heard the system has basically been completed. Thank you for your hard work, President Su. Su Wanqing replied calmly, You're too kind, President Shen. This is what I should do. Shen Qingli added, As for the system your team developed, I'm very satisfied. I hope we'll have more opportunities to cooperate in the future. Su Wanqing replied lightly, You flatter us, President Shen. Although that was said, in reality, we had already blacklisted Zundu. As we were talking, we had already reached the parking lot. Just as Shen Qingli was about to speak, a person suddenly rushed out from the side, holding a dagger and charging at Shen Qingli. Su Wanqing and I were about to leave, and didn't notice at first. By the time I realized, my eyes widened. I was too far from Shen Qingli, while Zi Mingxuan was closer. After reacting, Zi Mingxuan pushed Shen Qingli away, and the dagger plunged into his chest. The smell of blood instantly spread. The attacker was subdued. Shen Qingli's expression changed drastically as she supported the injured Zi Mingxuan and quickly got into the car. The car soon disappeared from Su Wanqing's and my sight. Su Wanqing tugged at me. Let's go. I replied, all right. That evening, when I returned to the old residence, Shen Qingli still hadn't come back. In fact, over the next 2 days, she didn't return at all. Jiang Nianian probably knew that Zi Mingxuan was injured, and on the very night he was hurt, she secretly slipped out, leaving the old residence behind. On Friday, I still went back to the old house. I planned to leave after taking the medicine. Only when I arrived did I realize Shen Qingli had come back. I froze for a moment, remembering that I was the one who initiated the divorce. I went upstairs. Shen Qingli was in the second-floor living room. Ji Qingyu was there as well. When they saw me, they both looked over. Shen Qingli said indifferently, You're back. I nodded. We can talk about the divorce. There's no need to avoid it here, I said directly. That day I said, Manager Shen, before I could finish, Take a look at this. If you have no objections, just sign it. I took it. It was a divorce agreement. The first clause stated that she would take Jiang Nianian's custody. The rest was all property she was giving to me. It spanned several pages. I had come just to ask about the progress of our divorce. Now, seeing this agreement, I casually put it down and placed it back on the table. I have no objections, I said. Then I opened my bag and took out a pen, ready to sign. Back then, the way I rose to this position wasn't honorable. Although she looked down on me, everyone could see how much I loved Shen Qingli all these years. Whether it was Shen Qingli herself or Ji Qingyu, they all knew it. Given how deeply I loved Shen Qingli, now that she wanted to divorce me, Ji Qingyu thought I wouldn't be able to accept it. But to her surprise, after seeing the agreement, not only did I agree readily, even when Shen Qingli wanted custody of our daughter, I had no objections. She looked at Shen Qingli in disbelief. Shen Qingli looked at me deeply, seemingly surprised by how readily I agreed. I took out my pen, bent down, and was about to sign when I paused and withdrew the pen. I said, This divorce agreement, I'll have a lawyer review it tomorrow. If everything is fine, I'll sign it within 2 days. And I'll have my lawyer contact you. There was a long list of assets she was giving me. When I skimmed through it just now, I even seemed to see shares in some of her companies. In the divorce agreement I gave her before, I didn't ask for anything from her. Now that she wants to give it to me, I won't refuse. But I'm worried there might be loopholes in the terms. If something happens to her company in the future, I'm afraid that holding these shares might make me a scapegoat. When Shen Qingli had this divorce agreement drafted, she might not have intended to harm me, but I can't be sure that after she marries Zi Mingxuan, he won't exploit these loopholes to come after me. Shen Qingli seemed not to expect me to be wary of her. After a pause, she said, All right. I nodded. I put the divorce agreement back into my briefcase, zipped it up, and didn't say another word. Then I got up and left. Ji Qingyu watched my departing figure, still in disbelief, looking at Shen Qingli. Is he all right? Shen Qingli looked at my retreating back, and only withdrew her gaze after hearing that. Lowering her eyes, she said calmly, I don't know. Ji Qingyu began to doubt everything. At that moment, old Madame Sheng came up in the elevator and said, dinner is ready. Jiang Sheng has already gone downstairs. Why are you just still sitting here? Hurry down and eat. Ji Qingyu snapped back to her senses. Okay, coming. Shen Qingli also stood up. Downstairs, Jiang Nianian was happily sitting on the sofa, leaning against me and chatting. I sat beside her, watching Jiang Nianian and listening attentively. It was such a warm mother-daughter scene, but thinking that I had silently given up Jiang Nianian's custody, Ji Qingyu felt that the scene before her was unreal. Ji Qingyu frowned. Old Madame Shen still didn't know about my divorce with Shen Qingli. She smiled and called out to me and Jiang Nianian, Jiang, Chen Nianian, come eat. Jiang Nianian and I answered in unison, okay, we're coming. Jiang Nianian held my finger and happily walked toward the dining room. Ji Qingyu sat next to Shen Qingli. I sat together with Jiang Nianian. Old Madame Shen said, Qingyu hasn't been here in a long time. When I saw you come just now, I specifically had them make a couple of your favorite dishes. You must eat more. Ji Qingyu replied, okay, Grandma, I'll take care of these meat dishes. I served food for Jiang Nianian and helped her remove the fish bones. At first glance, it seemed no different from before. Ji Qingyu couldn't help but take a few more looks, noticing her gaze. I glanced back coldly. Ji Qingyu paused, then suddenly realized that my current gaze was no longer filled with affection like before, but rather indifference. Thinking of this, she quickly withdrew her gaze and looked toward Shen Qingli. She found that Shen Qingli was indeed looking at me as well, and didn't seem to intend to look away immediately. In the past, this would have been impossible for Shen Qingli. Old Madame Shen suddenly cleared her throat and said, Qingyu, what are you looking at? Seeing that Ji Qingyu had been staring at me all evening, old Madame Shen frowned. Ji Qingyu also came to her senses, guessing that the old lady had misunderstood. She deliberately said something the old lady would accept. I just suddenly noticed that brother-in-law seems unusually quiet today and isn't talking to Qingli. It feels a bit strange. So I couldn't help but look a few more times. Old Madame Shen had also noticed that I wasn't as toward Shen Qingli as before. At the mention of this, she couldn't help but sigh, glancing at Shen Qingli and saying, isn't this all Qingli's fault? Shen Qingli only smiled faintly and said nothing. Now, I speak as little as possible. Hearing this, I simply lowered my head and ate quietly, with no intention of speaking. Before the meal was finished, Shen Qingli received a phone call. She glanced at it, stood up, and went to answer it. But she came back quickly. After finishing the meal, she said to old Madame Shen, I have something to do, so I'll be leaving first. Jiang Nianian was smart enough to guess that the call just now was from Ziming Chuan. She also wanted to go to the hospital to see him. So she said, Mom, I want to go too. Old Madame Shen said, take Jiang Sheng along as well. Tomorrow happens to be Saturday. You can all go out and relax together. Only then did I speak, Grandma, I have to meet a friend later. Jiang Nianian had been worried I might follow along, so hearing this reassured her. When she got into the car to leave, she said to me, bye, Dad. The car door closed, and Shen Qingli's car quickly drove away. I then drove off as well. After leaving the old house area, while driving, I called Su Wanqing. When she picked up, I went straight to the point. I'm getting a divorce from Shen Qingli. She just gave me a divorce agreement and allocated some property to me. I want to find a lawyer to check if there are any legal loopholes. Su Wanqing was having a meal with someone, and upon hearing this, she was delighted. I'll contact a reliable lawyer for you right away. After hanging up, I drove home. At the hospital, Jiang Nianian and Shen Qingli were still in the ward talking with Ziming Chuan. Ji Qingyu had gone out into the corridor to make a call. She said to Bai Jiyan, she's planning to divorce Jiang Sheng. Bai Jiyan was out of town at the moment, and upon hearing this, she stopped in her tracks. Are you sure? Ji Qingyu replied, of course I'm sure. I was there at the time. And Qingli didn't give him custody of Nianian either. Bai Jiyan tightened her grip on the phone and interrupted her. I have something to do. I need to make a call first. Without waiting for Ji Qingyu to respond, she hung up first. Bai Jian found my number and hesitated before dialing. But a few seconds later, she still made the call. I had just arrived home not long ago when I saw her call and casually answered it. Miss Bai, is something the matter? I thought she was calling to arrange a meeting about Meow Meow. If it's about seeing Meow Meow, I have something to handle tomorrow, so I might not be available. Would the day after tomorrow or next week work? Bai Jian knew I had misunderstood and simply said, okay. But she didn't hang up. I asked in confusion, President Bai, is there something else? Bai Jian could tell my voice was calm, as if there was none of the pain or breakdown she had expected. There was no response from her side for 2 or 3 seconds, so I had to speak again. Miss Bai, are you still there? Bai Jian came back to her senses and said, yes. I said directly, if there's nothing else, then I'll hang up. Bai Jian could only say, all right. I didn't say anything more, and hung up. My recent concept had been highly regarded by my teacher. A couple of days ago, Zhou Zhuwei sent me a message, asking me to organize the content, and she would review it for me. Once everything was confirmed to be fine, she would have me submit it to an authoritative journal. In the past few days, I had been busy with training in Changmo's matters, so this had not progressed much. Now that I had some free time, I wanted to finish this as soon as possible. After hanging up, Bai Jian called Ji Qingyu back. Qingli is going to divorce Jiang Sheng and wants custody of Nianian. He won't agree, right? The reason Ji Qingyu had called Bai Jian earlier was precisely to tell her this. Jiang Sheng already agreed. Whether it's the divorce or custody, he had no objections. He even signed it calmly. I can't believe it. Hearing this, Bai Jian was also extremely surprised. She fell silent for a moment, then asked, what about Qingli? How did she react? She was indeed quite surprised too. At dinner in the old house today, I felt she paid more attention to Jiang Sheng than usual. Oh, Bai Jian said lightly. Maybe he really wants a divorce. Ji Qingyu froze for a moment. You mean Jiang Sheng? She let out a laugh. How is that possible? He's like Qingli since he was a teenager, for so many years. There's no way he'd be willing to leave her. Bai Jian said meaningfully. People can change. Ji Qingyu insisted on her view. Anyway, I don't think it's possible. She added, no matter what, this is something worth celebrating for Qingli. When you come back from your business trip, and when Zimingchuan gets a bit better, we can find time to celebrate properly. At this point, after finishing her words, Ji Qingyu noticed Bai Jian had fallen silent. The next day, when I arrived at the law firm, Su Wanqing was already there. After I sat down, the lawyer's assistant brought me some tea. I handed the divorce agreement to Pei Zuken. Su Wanqing and Pei Zuken had been friends for many years. When he saw the first clause about Jiang Nianian's custody, he glanced at me. A few years ago, he had met Jiang Nianian several times. I had always treated her like my life. Whenever we talked on the phone, I would always talk about my daughter. But ever since I decided to divorce Sheng Qingli and return to Changmo, I had never once brought up Nianian in front of him. After noticing this, he had already guessed. During the more than a year Jiang Nianian spent abroad, she probably developed feelings for Zimingchuan, and may have even done things that chilled my heart. Seeing that I only had the lawyer focus on the loopholes in the property terms of the agreement, and not on the custody of our daughter, Su Wanqing understood that I was planning to give up my daughter. She didn't ask further about it. In her view, I was someone gentle at heart and deeply sentimental. If I could even part with my own daughter, it meant I was utterly heartbroken over her. Thinking of this, Su Wanqing didn't dwell on it further and continued reading the rest. After a while, she raised her brow. So many properties. To be fair, Sheng Qingli is quite generous. I sipped my tea and said nothing. Su Wanqing casually flipped through and didn't disturb Lao Yurcheng further. After more than an hour, Lao Yurcheng said to me, I've reviewed it repeatedly. There's indeed no problem with the agreement. It can even be said that this agreement is extremely favorable to you. I paused. What do you mean? Lao Yurcheng explained, leaving aside the cash. The real estate has already been clearly listed, with no ownership disputes at all. As for the shares Miss Shen Kingley is giving you, it clearly states that you only need to collect dividends each year, and if anything happens to the company, all legal responsibilities and compensation obligations will be borne by Miss Shen Kingley herself and have nothing to do with you. Su Wanqing widened her eyes. Are you sure you didn't misread it? Shen Kingley can be this kind-hearted. Lao Yurcheng said, are you questioning my professional ability? Su Wanqing explained, not really. I'm just as shocked. And the reason I had this contract reviewed wasn't because I suspected she would tamper with it, but because I was worried about loopholes. I said calmly, as long as there's no problem, that's fine. As I spoke, I picked up the pen beside me. Without any hesitation, I signed my name. I said to Pei Zukin, as for the divorce procedures that follow, I'll have to trouble you, Lao Yurpei. Pei Zukin nodded. I still have a meeting shortly. This afternoon, I'll contact Miss Shen Kingley's side and follow up on the subsequent divorce matters. I nodded. After finishing, I went back with Su Wanqing to continue writing the paper. At Shen Group, Shen Kingley was reviewing documents when her phone suddenly rang. She casually answered, hello. Who is this? The caller got straight to the point. Hello, Miss Shen Kingley. I am Mr. Jiang Sheng's lawyer. My surname is Pei. Regarding the divorce agreement between you and Mr. Jiang Sheng, Mr. Jiang has already signed it. As for the subsequent divorce procedures, Mr. Jiang has entrusted me to handle them. May I ask if you are available now, Miss Shen? Shen Kingley paused, then lowered her gaze and said, I still have to video conferences this afternoon. I'm afraid I won't be free. Around 10 a.m. tomorrow. You can come to Shen Group to see me. Lao Yurpei replied, all right. Thank you for your cooperation, Miss Shen. After ending the call, Shen Kingley continued reviewing the documents. Night had already fallen. I wanted to go back to the Jiang residence for dinner. When I arrived at the Jiang family villa area, it happened to be peak time for vehicles entering and leaving. I stopped the car and waited behind other residents for vehicle recognition. Just then, someone knocked on my car window. I turned my head and saw it was Bai Jian. I didn't expect to run into her here. I slowly lowered the window and greeted, Miss Bai. Bai Jian's gaze fell on my face. Seeing my calm expression, there was none of the haggardness she had expected. Seeing that she didn't speak, I asked, you need something, Miss Bai? Bai Jian said, I have something to take care of here. I saw your car and came over to say hello. I nodded, then go ahead and get busy. Bai Jian found an excuse and said, I heard there's a very famous pastry shop around here. I haven't really come to this area before. I looked around but couldn't find it. Do you know the exact location of the cake shop? I paused slightly and said, there is indeed a very famous cake shop around here. But it's not on this side. It's on another street about 1 kilometer away. I pointed out the direction for her. At that moment, it was my car's turn for recognition. After saying goodbye, I slowly drove forward. In fact, Bai Jian already knew where that cake shop was. After I left, she didn't go there at all. She got into her car and shortly after made a phone call. I'm back. I have a flight to catch later. Ask Kingley if she's available. If she's not, come with me to the hospital to visit Ziming Xuan. Ji Qingyu was extremely surprised. You're actually back. When did you return? Bai Jian didn't answer her question. Call Ziming Xuan first and let him know. See if it's convenient for him later. After hanging up, Bai Jian bought a bouquet of flowers and a fruit basket, then went to the hospital to meet Ji Qingyu. In the hospital room, upon seeing Bai Jian, Ziming Xuan smiled and asked, why did you suddenly come back? Bai Jian replied indifferently, I came back to handle some matters. Ziming Xuan lowered his gaze to look at the flowers she had just brought, and said, I see. I stayed at the Jiang residence that night, and got up early the next morning. When I went downstairs, my aunt was already awake, downstairs, personally busy preparing breakfast for me and the 2 children. When she saw me, she said, Jiangshan, you seem to be in a good mood today. I went over to help knead the dough. Not bad at all. On the other side, Shen Kingley had just arrived at Shen Group not long ago. When Ji Qingyu came, Shen Kingley glanced at her. Ji Qingyu said with a smile, I'm here to watch the show. Before Shen Kingley could say anything, a staff member came over and said, the accompanying lawyer has arrived. Under the guidance of the staff member, Pei Zukan arrived at the reception room where Shen Qingli received guests. Shen Qingli shook hands with him and said, "Please, have a seat." Pei Zukan didn't waste any time. After sitting down, he took out the divorce agreement I had signed yesterday and pushed it in front of Shen Qingli. Today was the weekend. Ji Qingyu had come specially, just to see whether I would really sign it. At this moment, she leaned over and saw that I had indeed signed. She was shocked and said, "You actually signed it?" Shen Qingli glanced at the signature I had written and showed no reaction. Then began talking with Pei Zukan. After discussing for a while, she said, "As for the properties and shares in the agreement, there are quite a lot of them. On my side, I'll need some time to handle the relevant changes. Once all the procedures are completed, I will contact you again." Pei Zukan nodded. "All right." After Lao Songpei left Shen Group, Pei Zukan contacted me and told me the result. I frowned and asked, "About how long will it take to finish?" Pei Zukan wasn't sure either. "That depends on Miss Shen's progress." I replied calmly, "Got it." "Thank you, Lao Pei." The next day, I went to work at Changmo as usual. In the afternoon, Su Wanqing and I were discussing work at the company when her phone suddenly rang. Su Wanqing frowned at the caller ID. It was a call from Wen Ruotong. She felt puzzled, but still answered it. After hanging up, she said to me, "He wants to cooperate with us on a new project. Recently, the two projects I've been leading, the professor attaches great importance to them. It's already confirmed that we will once again cooperate closely with the government. The project has a very promising future. Once the news comes out after a while, I'm afraid Changmo's doors will be flooded by partners." Su Wanqing curled her lips and said, "Wen Shichu really is an old fox, but being in that position, he has first-hand information, so favoring his own people is normal." She gritted her teeth and said, "Our company really does need to cooperate with others to expand the project. But lately, I just can't stand Wen Ruotong." I knew she was upset because Wen Ruotong likes Zi Mingquan. I said calmly, "As long as the project proceeds smoothly, our priority is to secure the maximum benefit. Everything else is secondary. I've met Wen Shichu once. He may have personal motives, but judging from his attitude, he is indeed someone trustworthy." Su Wanqing lifted her chin and said, "Anyway, before we officially start, there's still some time. I'll let him wait for now." I smiled, "All right, as long as you're happy." Half an hour later, Su Wanqing's phone rang again. Seeing the caller ID, this time she looked both disdainful and pleased. I knew it was another acquaintance calling. Su Wanqing smiled and looked at me. "It's Bai Jian." Bai Jian wouldn't call unless something was up. Su Wanqing asked me, "Should I answer?" "I am Shen Qingli's husband, Bai Jian." As Shen Qingli's childhood friends, they looked down on me. Yet they accepted Zi Mingquan, the third party, and were even close to him. In her eyes, Bai Jian was even more detestable than Wen Ruotong. I didn't want Su Wanqing to act impulsively, so I persuaded, "Answer it." Su Wanqing picked up the call. As expected, she was also calling to seek cooperation. After stating her purpose, "Bai Jian, I'm currently on a business trip out of town," she said. "I'll return to the capital tomorrow at noon. Let's have dinner together tomorrow evening." Su Wanqing replied calmly, "Thank you, President Bai. But the project has just started, and the company is extremely busy. I really can't make time tomorrow." "Maybe next time." She hung up. Su Wanqing happily slapped the table. But as she laughed, she suddenly fell silent. She looked at me and said, "Do you think Shen Qingli might also want to cooperate with us?" Hearing this, I replied calmly, "I'm not sure, but everything should be based on the project itself. We can put personal grudges aside for now." At this point, Su Wanqing actually felt quite expectant, hoping Shen Qingli would call her, but her expectation was disappointed. Next, she received several more calls, all seeking cooperation on the new project, but none related to Shen Qingli. However, near the end of the workday, she received a call from an unknown number. She glanced at it twice before answering. The other party spoke first. "Is this President Su?" "I'm Zilai Hai, Zi Mingquan's father." Su Wanqing immediately stopped walking and held the phone away. She mouthed it to me, "Zilai Hai." I looked at her without speaking. Having known each other for years, Su Wanqing naturally understood what I meant. If with others we could ignore past grievances and prioritize cooperation, then for the Z family, that was completely unnecessary. Su Wanqing put the phone back to her ear. Her tone was polite, but her eyes were cold. So it's President Z. May I ask what you need from me? Zilai Hai was indeed calling to seek cooperation with Su Wanqing. After he explained his purpose, Su Wanqing said, I understand your intention, President Z. If it's suitable, we will definitely give your side priority consideration. Please rest assured. Zilai Hai was not a fool. Zilai Hai knew Su Wanqing's words were flawless. But what would actually happen was still uncertain. He still wanted to find a chance to invite Su Wanqing out for a meal, but Su Wanqing used being busy as an excuse and hung up. She looked at me and said, Wenruo Tong, Bai Jiyan, as top-tier wealthy families in the country. It's understandable that they received the news first, but the Z family, as outsiders in the capital, who haven't even established themselves yet, also got the news this early. I knew what she was trying to say. That the Z family receiving the news so quickly might be because Shen Qingli, or Bai Jiyan and the others, had leaked it to them. Su Wanqing curled her lips. Her good mood was ruined just like that. But she knew my mood was even worse, and said directly, The world is full of money. I'll treat you to a big meal. I smiled and said, Thanks. After that, Su Wanqing and I went out together. When we arrived at the restaurant, we saw members of the Z family and the Sun family walking toward us. My expression remained blank, while Su Wanqing muttered in a low voice, Enemies always cross paths. The Z and Sun families were delighted to see Su Wanqing. Zilai Hai smiled broadly. President Su. We meet again. Su Wanqing smiled faintly, yes. We meet again. Zilai Hai invited, since we ran into each other, why don't we? Earlier, when he called Su Wanqing, he had already wanted to invite her to dinner. Now that they had met, he naturally didn't want to miss the opportunity. Su Wanqing refused without hesitation. No, this is my personal time. Maybe next time, since she had said so. Zilai Hai couldn't force it. Watching Su Wanqing and me leave, Lin Lilan frowned and said, I heard from Ming Xuan. That's Su Wanqing, because of Jiang Cheng. Her attitude toward her has always been lukewarm. As for Changmo's project this time, could Su Wanqing also, because of him, refuse to consider cooperating with us? Sun Yuqing said calmly, Mom, there's still some time before the bidding. For these two projects, nothing has been decided yet, so anything is possible. Sun Mansion also said, That's right. Regarding what happened between Ming Xuan and her before, it was delayed because of old Madame Shen's obstruction and never progressed. But now hasn't there suddenly been a turning point? So we shouldn't lose heart. There's definitely still a chance. The turning point Sun Mansion referred to was actually Shen Qingli and my divorce. Speaking of this, old Madame Sun's mood improved greatly. Originally, they and Ming Xuan didn't know about it. It was only when Ji Qingyu casually mentioned it to Ming Xuan that they found out. Old Madame Sun smiled happily. Qingli has always wanted a divorce before, and now Ming Xuan got injured saving her. She ignored old Madame Shen's opposition and insisted on divorcing Jiang Cheng. Qingli truly cares deeply about Ming Xuan. Hearing this, Sun Yuqing and Zilai Hai also smiled. However, looking in the direction where Su Wanqing and I had just left, old Madame Sun's smile faded slightly. That boy Jiang Cheng definitely doesn't want a divorce. This won't end with the divorce falling through, will it? Sun Yuqing said coldly, I heard from Ming Xuan that Qingli can basically make her own decisions. The reason she didn't divorce before was just to find the right opportunity and avoid hurting old Madame Shen's feelings. In her heart, she has always chosen Ming Xuan. Now that Ming Xuan almost lost his life saving her, and she quietly went to divorce Jiang Cheng, it shows she no longer wants Ming Xuan to suffer because of old Madame Shen. Old Madame Sun said calmly, as for Qingli, I have no doubts. I'm only worried that Jiang Cheng might stir up trouble and force Qingli to compromise. At this point, she said to old Madame Z and Zilai Hai, I'm afraid you'll still have to talk to him yourselves. Zilai Hai and old Madame Z thought the same. After we got out of the elevator and were about to head to the private room, 3 tall figures walked toward us. Seeing those 3, Su Wanqing thought to herself, did I forget to check the almanac before going out today? Why do I keep running into annoying people? I glanced over. It was Wenruo Tong and Yao Weian, and another person who looked familiar, but I couldn't remember where I had seen her. When the 3 saw Su Wanqing and me, they took the initiative to greet her. President Su. What a coincidence. Su Wanqing smiled faintly. It really is quite a coincidence. They invited Su Wanqing to have a meal together. Su Wanqing smiled and declined, no need. I still have things to do. It's not very convenient. Hu Aluo looked at the other person. Miss Chun, how come you're free today as well? With a calm expression. I took a few days off. Su Wanqing nodded. Let's have a meal another time. We have things to do, so we'll go in first. Chun Jing nodded. Su Wanqing and I then entered the private room first, after we had walked some distance away. Chun Jing spoke up. Which of you offended her? Yao Weian looked confused. No, right? Wenruo Tong frowned and said nothing. After entering the private room, Yao Weian took a sip of tea and said, to be honest, Su Wanqing is really quite impressive. If those 2 projects are really completed, her value will skyrocket. Chun Jing said calmly, she has been smart since childhood. And she studied under Zhou Zhuwei, the field she specialized in. You used to have a crush on the guy beside Su Wanqing, but you quickly shifted your affection to someone else. If you moved on, then fine. But why did you start disliking him too? Did he do something wrong? Just now, when Ruo Tong didn't even want to look at him properly, he couldn't even be bothered to glance at him. His disdain was so obvious that it was impossible to ignore. When Ruo Tong frowned and said, can we not talk about him? As they ordered food, Chun Jing smoothly changed the topic. Changmo had a lot going on. That night, after dinner, Su Wanqing and I went back to Changmo to continue working. On Wednesday morning, Su Wanqing and I were in a meeting when the secretary came in and said, Bai Jian is here. Given Bai Jian's status, it wouldn't be appropriate to ignore her. So she said to me, you continue leading the meeting. I'll go take a look. When Su Wanqing arrived, Bai Jian was already seated in the reception room. Seeing that only Su Wanqing came, a subtle shift passed through Bai Jian's deep eyes. She stood up and took the initiative to shake hands. Sorry for coming unannounced. I hope President Su can forgive me. Su Wanqing replied, you're too polite, President Bai. After sitting down, Bai Jian went straight to the point and handed a document to Su Wanqing. This is my proposal for cooperation. President Su, please have a look. Su Wanqing took it and began reading. The more she read, the more serious she became. Finally, she put the document down and said, President Bai is indeed very sincere, but I still have other considerations on my side. It may take some time before I can give you a reply. Bai Jian maintained a good attitude. No problem. It's normal to compare multiple options. I understand. In the future, President Su, if you have any thoughts about the terms I've offered, feel free to contact me anytime. And then left. Bai Jian had a good attitude and strong cooperation intent. Su Wanqing couldn't find any fault with her, and even personally escorted her downstairs. By the time she returned, I had already finished the meeting. She couldn't help but say to me, this Bai Jian has quite strong execution ability. I only rejected her on the phone the day before yesterday, and today she came with a fully prepared proposal. Throughout the whole process, she didn't say a single unnecessary word. To be honest, I'm really tempted by the proposal she offered. I nodded slightly. Then we can observe for now. If it's truly suitable, cooperating with her wouldn't be a problem. Su Wanqing thought the same. With no one disturbing us, a fulfilling and peaceful weekend passed just like that. On Monday, I went to Changmo as usual. From that day on, those who had previously called Su Wanqing, expressing their desire to cooperate with Changmo, began coming one after another with proposals. When Ruo Tong came on Thursday, Su Wanqing had happened to be on a business trip on Wednesday. After receiving the news, I put down my work and headed to the reception room. When the door of Changmo's reception room was pushed open, when Ruo Tong stood up, but when she saw that I was the only one entering, she paused. I extended my hand politely and said, hello, President Wen. I'm Jia Wansheng. Su Wanqing went out of town yesterday and is currently not at Changmo. All matters at Changmo right now are fully handled by me. If there's anything President Wen wants to discuss, you can talk to me as well. Wen Ruotong didn't know whether what I said was true or if I was deliberately trying to show my importance in Su Wanqing's eyes. What was even more ridiculous was that although she knew she had come to discuss cooperation, I hadn't even brought any technical staff to avoid unnecessary trouble. When Ruotong didn't choose to leave, instead she extended her hand. Qingqing shook hands with me and said, "Then I'll have to trouble you, Mr. Jiang." She sat down and handed over the document. "This is our company's proposal. Mr. Jiang, please take a look." I took it and said, "All right, I'll review it first." I opened the document. Just as I was about to start reading, another secretary knocked and came in and whispered in my ear, "Mr. Jiang, there are visitors downstairs. It's Zilai Hai and Zi Mingxuan. Shall I have them wait in your office?" I interrupted her and said softly, No need. Send them away." After Su Wanqing's secretary left, I apologized to Wen Ruotong and then began reviewing her proposal. While reading the cooperation proposal she provided, I thought that although Wen Ruotong came a bit late, she clearly had confidence in doing so, because her proposal was detailed and almost perfectly matched my requirements. After more than half an hour, I put down the document and said, "President Wen's proposal does indeed align very well with our company's needs. We will consider it carefully." Wen Ruotong didn't want to talk much with me, planning to discuss it further when Su Wanqing returned. But on the surface, she remained polite. "Thank you very much for your recognition. I look forward to the opportunity to cooperate with your company." After speaking, she added, "I still have matters to attend to. Mr. Jiang, see you next time." Even before, I had sensed that Wen Ruotong didn't like me much, and now meeting in the reception room, although she tried to be polite, I could still feel the indifference in her attitude. I pretended not to notice and said, "All right, see you next time." Then I instructed Su Wanqing's secretary, "Secretary Qian, please see President Wen out." Wen Ruotong left. When she reached downstairs, she saw a familiar figure. Zi Mingxuan and Zilai Hai had not left, because they thought President Su was away on a business trip, and that it was just an excuse not to see them. They sat downstairs and kept waiting. Unexpectedly, they didn't see Su Wanqing, but instead ran into Wen Ruotong first. Last week, Wen Ruotong had gone to Zundu, but didn't see Zi Mingxuan. After asking the staff there, she learned that Zi Mingxuan was injured. The wound on Zi Mingxuan was quite deep, and his hospital stay hadn't been easy. So, his face still looked somewhat pale. Seeing Wen Ruotong's extraordinary demeanor, Zilai Hai guessed she wasn't an ordinary person. He turned and asked, "Mingxuan, who is this?" Zi Mingxuan said calmly, "This is President Wen." Then he introduced, "This is my father, Zilai Hai." After learning that, Wen Ruotong politely said, "So you're President Zi. Nice to meet you." After exchanging pleasantries, Zi Mingxuan asked, "President Wen, are you here at Changmo to discuss cooperation with President Su as well?" Wen Ruotong smiled, "Yes, and you and President Zi are here for the same reason." Zi Mingxuan replied, "Yes." "Then have you met President Su?" Wen Ruotong shook her head, "No, President Su has gone out of town." Hearing this, Zilai Hai smiled and said, "So President Su really is on a business trip? I thought she just didn't want to see us." Wen Ruotong paused. Seeing them sitting there, she asked, "Weren't you invited upstairs?" Zi Mingxuan answered honestly, "No. President Su's secretary said she was on a business trip and asked us to leave." Wen Ruotong's expression darkened slightly. Noticing this, Zi Mingxuan asked, "What's wrong? Is something not right?" Wen Ruotong said coldly, "President Su is indeed not here, but the one who met with me was Mr. Jiang, whom I met before at Zundu. He said that since President Su is absent, all matters at Changmo are handled entirely by him. He can represent Changmo in discussing cooperation with me." Zilai Hai was stunned. Zi Mingxuan also paused. He then said indifferently, "Is that so?" Then he said to Zilai Hai, "In that case, Dad, let's head back first." Wen Ruotong frowned and was about to speak when I also came downstairs. Seeing the three of them, I paused before I could speak. Zi Mingxuan's phone suddenly rang. He answered the call and curled his lips into a smile. Kingsley, you've arrived okay. I'll come out right now. When Ruotong said, President Shen is here. At the mention of Shen Kingsley, Zi Mingxuan's tone became gentler. My injuries haven't fully healed yet. Kingsley isn't at ease. So, she came to pick me up. Then he added, President Wen, we'll be leaving first. See you next time. She then said to Zi Mingxuan, I'm leaving too. Let's go together. Zi Mingxuan nodded, without sparing me a glance, and walked away without looking back. But before Wen Ruotong left, she turned back and shot me a cold look. Seeing her expression, I didn't even need to think to understand why. At that thought, I let out a cold laugh and withdrew my gaze first, treating them as if they were air, and walked toward the exit almost alongside them. Seeing me leave with them without any hesitation, Zi Lihai was surprised and frowned. Zi Mingxuan's steps paused ever so slightly. Then he acted as if he hadn't seen me and kept walking. At the parking lot, Shen Kingsley had gotten out of the car and was leaning against the door waiting for Zi Mingxuan. When she saw me and Zi Mingxuan walking out together, she froze for a moment, but her expression quickly returned to normal. I also saw Shen Kingsley, but I kept my gaze straight ahead and walked toward where my car was parked. I got into the car, set the navigation, and drove away. There was a banquet on Saturday, and Su Wanqing returned on Friday afternoon. After learning about Wen Ruotong, she let out an angry laugh and said coldly, in that case, there's no need for us to cooperate with her. Seeing her would just annoy me. I thought the same. There are plenty of good partners, not just Wen Ruotong. There's no need for me to wrong myself. On Saturday afternoon, I was arranging the suit I would wear that night when my phone rang. It was a call from Jiang Nianian. I hadn't answered her previous calls. I thought she might reduce the frequency of calling me because of that, but unexpectedly this past week, she still called me 2 or 3 times as usual. But I didn't answer any of them. This time was the same I didn't pick up. It seemed Nianian was no longer as upset as before. After 8 o'clock, Shen Kingsley arrived together with Zi Mingxuan at the entrance of the banquet hall. Zi Mingxuan's outfit today was, as always, expensive and just as handsome, impossible to look away from. As soon as he and Shen Kingsley appeared, they attracted everyone's attention. When Ruotong and Chun Jing had just arrived, noticing the commotion, they also looked over. Upon seeing Zi Mingxuan, a trace of admiration flashed in Wen Ruotong's eyes again. Chun Jing looked at them and asked Yao Weian, That's Zi Mingxuan? Yao Weian nodded. Handsome, right? After taking a couple of looks, Chun Jing withdrew her gaze and didn't comment. Shen Kingsley's influence was evident. As soon as she arrived, many people went up to greet her. Only then did Su Wanqing and I arrive a bit late. Chanmo had recently become the most talked about presence in the business circle. Therefore, when Su Wanqing appeared, the gazes of others at the banquet were even more enthusiastic than before. The moment Su Wanqing and I stepped into the banquet hall, Bai Jian, Ji Qingyu, Chun Jing, Guo Ruotong all noticed Chanmo at the very first moment. As the most talked about company in the circle recently, it was only natural for the host to invite Su Wanqing. It was just that Bai Jian wasn't sure whether I would attend with Su Wanqing. Now, seeing Su Wanqing appear arm in arm with me, a flicker passed through Bai Jian's cold eyes. Ji Qingyu had also guessed that I might show up, but didn't expect me to attend in full formal attire. As soon as Su Wanqing and I entered the banquet hall, we were surrounded by the crowd. Everyone stepped forward to compliment Su Wanqing. Su Wanqing smiled and said, You flatter me. For Chanmo to reach where it is today is the result of the collective efforts of all our employees. At this point, she looked at me and said, Especially Jiang Chun, his contributions are indispensable. The core technology is all with me, but my identity still cannot be exposed for now. And this time we've even signed a confidentiality agreement with the government. Although my identity can't be revealed, it's still fine to emphasize my importance a bit. Recently, there has been more attention on Chanmo. Many people also know that I am both an employee of Chanmo and have a very close relationship with Su Wanqing. Su Wanqing would even delegate authority to me to handle company matters when she is not around. Now hearing her say this, many people subconsciously felt that my work ability must be quite good. As for her saying that Changmo has achieved this today because of my indispensable contributions, no one really took it seriously, but they still smiled and flattered. Mr. Jiang truly has both talent and good looks. Hearing this, Ziming Xuan let out a mocking smile. He looked toward Shen Qingli and saw that she only glanced at me briefly before indifferently looking away. Ziming Xuan also withdrew his gaze coldly, but then noticed Bai Jian staring intently at me, though perhaps she was actually looking at Su Wanqing. Bai Jian also wanted to cooperate with Changmo. Ziming Xuan knew about it. Seeing her look over, Bai Jian withdrew her gaze. When Bai Jian saw that there were fewer people around Su Wanqing and me, she quickly sighed. I'll go over and greet Su Wanqing. Then she said, since you've decided to cooperate with Changmo, if that's the case, why don't we go over together and say hello? Shen Qingli said calmly, I'm not in a hurry. You go ahead. Hearing that, Bai Jian walked over. President Su, Mr. Jiang. Seeing it was her, Su Wanqing's smile faded slightly. So it's President Bai. I also greeted politely, President Bai. At this moment, when Ruo Tong also walked over, unlike Bai Jian, she only greeted Su Wanqing, President Su. Su Wanqing replied, President Wen, you're here as well. Sorry, I was too busy earlier and didn't see you. When Ruo Tong naturally noticed that Su Wanqing seemed even colder toward her than the last time they met, she wasn't surprised. She shot me a cold glance. She was sure I must have spoken badly about her in front of Su Wanqing. She didn't care much about Su Wanqing's attitude and said, I visited Changmo a few days ago. I wonder if President Su is aware of it. Su Wanqing nodded slightly. Jiangsheng told me about your proposal, President Wen. I've reviewed it, and I also think it's very good. However, personally, I don't quite like it, so I'm sorry cooperation is probably not possible. When Ruo Tong didn't expect Su Wanqing to disregard right and wrong to this extent because of me, she said coldly, I thought President Su was someone who clearly separates public and private matters. Since things had been laid out, Su Wanqing didn't hide it either, and smiled. I am. But after the breakup, although there was some unpleasantness between me and Su Wanqing, however, when Luo Tong did not intend to just give up on cooperating with Changmo, she said, President Su thinks there is a problem with my proposal. The next time I will bring a new proposal and visit Changmo. She glanced at the person beside her, Bai Jian, and added, since President Su still has matters to attend to, I won't disturb you any further. Goodbye. After saying that, when Luo Tong turned and left, throughout the entire time, the media, Bai Jian, stood by and listened. But from the way when Luo Tong didn't even look at me properly, I guess that Su Wanqing not wanting to cooperate with Wen Luo Tong was related to me. She didn't ask further about it, and simply pretended not to hear as she said, I have also prepared a new proposal. I wonder if you're free on Monday to have a meal together. Seeing that Bai Jian set aside the grudges between the four of them, and even thought to include me when inviting for a meal, Su Wanqing felt a bit more favorable toward her, but still kept things strictly professional. Monday, is it? I'm not sure yet. If I'm free, I'll contact you. Please rest assured, President Bai. Bai Jian was not in a hurry. With President Su's words, I'm at ease. As her voice fell, the host on the stage ahead suddenly came up to speak. Immediately afterward, the host of the banquet and his wife, amid everyone's applause and the music that started playing, began to dance. Many guests joined in the evening's banquet. There were many handsome and outstanding young elites. At this moment, a particularly good-looking young man walked toward Bai Jian. Miss Bai, may I have the honor of inviting you to a dance? Bai Jian's expression shifted slightly, and she subtly turned her gaze toward me. Su Wanqing didn't notice and became interested. She bent slightly and made an exaggerated gesture. Handsome and charming Mr. Jiang, may I have the honor of inviting you to a dance? I smiled faintly and said, of course, the honor is mine. As I spoke, I took Su Wanqing's hand and led her onto the dance floor. Seeing this, Bai Jian also extended her hand to the young man. As Su Wanqing and I stepped onto the dance floor, our line of sight happened to face Shen Qingli and Ziming Xuan. They